Okay, guys, welcome back. We're going to move into this next topic of what is merit. This is a actual type of wholesome Kamma. Now that you guys understand what wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma is, this is a type of wholesome Kamma that you're going to need to generate in order to help you to be able to move your way towards enlightenment. This is chapter 10 in our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. So here, what merit is it's the action of taking frequent action to give something more than is strictly required in any given situation that is going to contribute to the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha. This is like your time, effort, energy, or resources. There's something called generosity that you're going to need to practice with everybody and anybody, and I'm going to share with you guys what that is. But then there's merit, which is a unique type of generosity where you're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources to help other people to gain access to the teachings. So this is a bunch of words to help you understand that. The Buddha taught to practice merit with what was referred to as the Aryan Sangha. This is a Pali word that means the noble community. The noble community is anybody who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or someone who's practicing for the 4 stages of enlightenment. If you can think about during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were thousands and thousands of people studying with him, and there was a certain group of people that were close to him, that were practicing the teachings very closely, but on the outer edges, there were other people who were practicing, or maybe not practicing the teachings so closely. So when the Buddha taught about practicing generosity to support the continuation of his teachings, he'd always taught to find individuals who were practicing the teachings closely, the virtuous practitioners, because that was going to mean that they were practicing the teachings closely. So they had cultivated the wisdom of what it takes to be able to practice the teachings, and then they would be able to share those teachings with other people. So you're going to see a discourse here from the Buddha where he talks about these 8 types of individuals. People who are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, or someone who's practicing for one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. So making offerings to these individuals will help ensure that the teachings become available for more and more people in the world. So you could make offerings such as food, water, clothing, shelter, medical care, time, effort, energy, financial support, resources. This is all to help other people to gain access to the teachings. So everything that you see around you is an merit that somebody had produced. So everything you see, whether it's this land that we're on, these buildings that we're sitting in, now that we've done all this construction, all this wallpaper, the projectors, the air conditioning, the cabinets, even the computer I'm using was purchased by somebody that was willing to help me to be able to share the teachings with you guys. Everything and anything was donated here. This is because people found value in the teachings and they could see that it was helpful for them, and they would like to make them available for other people. They could see the condition of their mind improving and the condition of their life, so they made support either their time, effort, energy, or resources to be able to help other people get access to the teachings. Even the cleaning of the temple and anything you see, it's all being done by people who are motivated to see the teachings of the Buddha reach more and more people in the world. And we refer to this as merit, that somebody has practiced generosity in order to produce merit. So I've got this diagram to be able to help you understand what I'm talking about here, because you're going to need to practice generosity. This is down here at the bottom. You're going to need to practice generosity with lots of people in your life. An enlightened being isn't selfish. You're going to need to practice the giving and sharing, right? This is living open-handedly and being joyful in that. You're going to need to practice generosity with your parents, your siblings, your coworkers, your neighbors. You need to be able to share, but you even need to do that from the middle way, right? If you were sharing excessively, you're going to deplete your resources of time, effort, energy, and resources, and you're not going to have what you need in order to sustain your life. But if you are never sharing, the mind's going to be quite selfish. And that's what happens with there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, is the mind can become quite selfish. So you're not interested in sharing excessively where you don't have what you need, but you're also not interested in being selfish. You would like to practice this middle way. The middle way is to practice where you're understanding that you're going to need to practice generosity, and this is enhancing the quality of your mind and doing that as you're able to, right? So any generosity is helpful for you. That's going to be beneficial. But as you're practicing generosity, you can ask yourself this question to determine whether or not this is merit or not. Was this an offering to a teacher to support the continued sharing of the Buddha's teachings, helping others to attain enlightenment? If the answer is no, you're experiencing these benefits where you're eliminating craving, desire attachment from the mind, and that's helping you to be able to get to enlightenment because you're sharing without any expectation of anything in returning. It's training your mind to let go, and it's helping you to produce these wholesome Kamma or wholesome results because you're eliminating that selfishness in the mind. This is how you're experiencing that based on having practiced generosity. So even if the answer is no, there's still benefit there. So if you're sharing food with your neighbors, or you're inviting your mother out to dinner and you're paying for her dinner, this is generosity, and you're experiencing the enhancement to the quality of your mind. But if you ask this question, was this an offering to a teacher to support the continued sharing of the teachings of the Buddha for others to attain enlightenment? If the answer is yes, you're still getting those benefits where you're enhancing the quality of your mind through eliminating craving, desire, attachment, and you're still eliminating that selfishness, which is going to help you to get closer and closer to enlightenment because you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment out of your own mind. But you're also getting this other benefit, is that other people are gaining access to the teachings. And now more and more people gain access to the teachings. And that's what we refer to as merit. Okay, so it's generosity that is directed towards the continued sharing of the teachings of the Buddha so that other people can get access to the teachings. And it's important to understand here, if you guys remember back to the life story of the Buddha, that the Buddha didn't teach generosity to enrich himself. Sometimes that's what we see as examples in the world. We see people that are sharing these kinds of teachings and they teach to give to them, and somehow your life is going to get better. But remember, the Buddha was a prince. He was destined to become a king. He had all the money you could imagine. He didn't need more money. He actually left the riches of the royal family and went into this life of homelessness. And he talks about how him practicing generosity in his current life and his previous lives is one of the things that propelled him to getting to enlightenment. And that's why he actually taught generosity, not because he was trying to enrich himself. Even during his lifetime, he didn't actually accept the currency of the time. During that period of time, they would use gold and silver as currency, but he actually didn't accept this during his life. He only accepted food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. That's all he would accept. And his students that were studying with him, they didn't accept gold and silver, which was the currency of the time. And the reason why he could do this is because he lived side by side with his students. They would invite him to come live in their home, and he would be there for weeks or even months at a time, living in this person's home and sharing teachings with that family and the wider village as well. They would come together and he would share teachings with the entire village. So there was always someone there to give him food or clothing or shelter or medical care. Where today people do accept financial support because there's not always a student right there when I need to fill up the gas tank of my motorbike, for example, right? So there's a need for that kind of support. But an individual who today is accepting any kind of donations, there you should see a certain amount of that coming back to the community, that this person shouldn't be enriching themselves. In fact, there were some situations like this in Thailand not so long ago where there were ordained practitioners that were accepting donations, but they were using it to enrich themselves. There was this one individual who was buying like Gucci sunglasses, Fendi bags. They were chartering jets to fly around Thailand and things like this. And the Thai people found out about it, and they went to go arrest this person for fraud. And this person had escaped, and they went to the USA, and they were in the USA. So the Thai government issued an Interpol warrant, and they asked the U.S. police to arrest this person for them. And they got arrested, and they were extradited back to Thailand, and they went through the court system. They were found guilty, and they were sentenced to 20 years in prison for using the funds of the temple to be able to enrich themselves and purchase these things. So Thailand takes this very seriously. And if you see a person that is supporting themselves based on donations, you should see them using a small portion of that for themselves, for like food, clothing, shelter, medical care, things like this. But you should see that they're offering things to the community, that there should be availability for classes and courses and retreats. There should be a nice retreat center for people to come and learn and grow and develop in that environment. So Thailand takes these things very, very seriously. And these are things that you can look at on the internet, that there's been different people that the Thai government or the Thai people have somehow taken action against because they weren't practicing the way that the Buddha taught, which is to just use a small portion of the donations to support yourself. And then what you should see is those offerings coming back to the community. And you'll see this here in the words of the Buddha where he talks about this. So I'm going to read this to you and then I'll explain to you guys, but it's pretty self-explanatory. But this one is called an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He says, monks, these 8 persons are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? The stream enterer, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of stream entry, the once returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of once returning, the non-returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of non-returning, the arahant, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of arahantship. These 8 persons, monks, are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. So I'm going to pause here and help you guys understand what he's talking about, and then we'll go on. If you guys remember back to Monday when we were talking about the 4 stages of enlightenment, stream entry, once returner, non-returner, arahant, that's what he's referring to here. He's saying it would be wise for you to make offerings to someone who's in one of these 4 stages of enlightenment, or someone who's practicing for the realization of these stages of enlightenment. Because as I mentioned, there could be many people that are learning and practicing the teachings around the Buddha, but not everybody was practicing them closely. So if you're making offerings to someone who's in one of these 4 stages of enlightenment, or in the practice to realize one of those 4 stages, you're coming in contact with someone who has a lot of wisdom about the path to enlightenment, and this is helpful for you. Whereas if you were to just make an offering to any old person who might be out there, you're not necessarily coming in contact with someone who has deep wisdom about the teachings. So the Buddha taught you to find individuals who are deeply practicing the teachings, because in order to be in one of these 4 stages, you would need to be deeply practicing the teachings. And he gives you guidance to be able to discern whether or not somebody is in one of these 4 stages. Because when you first start, it would be challenging for you to figure out whether someone's in one of these first stages, but he gives you some kind of like basic guidance. He says that you should look at the quality of someone's mind, not in a judgmental way, right? You're not looking down on them or anything like that. But he says, look at the condition of their mind. That if you notice that they are muddle-minded, which means they're lacking concentration and they're not able to clearly articulate the teachings, then this person hasn't practiced his teachings very closely. Because if you're practicing the teachings closely, you would have eliminated pollution out of your mind, and your mind would be focused. It would be concentrated. You would have clarity of mind. So if someone's muddle-minded, then they're not practicing the teachings very closely. He also taught to look at someone's moral conduct in the way that they interact in the world. Essentially, we can think about it, are they polite? Are they kind? Are they friendly? Are they respectful? He gave this one discourse where he said, if he was a cow and he was walking on soft earth, and he was leaving hoof prints behind, and there was a donkey behind him, and this donkey was putting its hooves in the same hoof prints as the cow, and the donkey is thinking, I'm a cow, I'm a cow, I'm a cow. Does that make the donkey a cow just because it's putting its hoof prints in the same hoof prints as the cow, and the donkey thinks that it's a cow? And of course the answer is no. That doesn't make the donkey a cow. So the moral of the story is, just because someone's wearing an orange robe and shaving their hair doesn't mean that it would be wise to support this person. Or just because someone's wearing white clothes and shaving their hair doesn't mean that it's wise to support this person. You need to be able to look at who you're supporting and making sure that your donations and your time, your effort, your energy, your resources are going to a place that is contributing to the continued growth of the teachings for people to be able to get access to them, for you and for other people to get access to them. So you can look at the condition of a person's mind, and you can look at their practice of moral conduct and how they interact in the world with other people. And you should see that they're practicing the teachings closely by them having a clear, concentrated mind, and by interacting with people in polite and respectful and kind ways. So here, the benefit for you is by you being able to identify these individuals and then come in contact with them and then share your offerings with them. You now have an opportunity to talk to them and gain wisdom about what it takes to get to enlightenment. So there isn't anything mystical or magical here by you making an offering to an enlightened being that, wow, that's just going to produce something mystical or magical. It's like, no, if you can make an offering to an enlightened being, that means you've cultivated the wisdom to be able to identify that person, and you can sit down with them and talk to them and now ask them questions that's going to help you on the path to enlightenment. So now the Buddha goes on here. He says, the four practicing the way in the four established in the fruit. This is the upright community, composed in wisdom in virtuous behavior or moral conduct. For people intent on sacrifice, for living beings seeking merit, making merit that ripens in the acquisitions. What is given to the community bears great fruit. So here he's calling these individuals, these 8 individuals, he's calling them the upright community. Sometimes he refers to them as the straight community. And the reason why is because during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were many different people that were teaching, and they were all claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And then there was the Buddha, right? And his students were practicing. In the household community, they were just supporting people to be able to try to get to enlightenment. And they didn't necessarily know who to support or who not to support. And he would oftentimes refer to his community as the straight community or the upright community, because he knew that his students were practicing the teachings closely, and he would refer to them in this way so people would know, like, hey, they're the ones who are composed in wisdom and virtuous behavior. They're the ones that are going to help you to get to enlightenment. And then he says, for people intent on sacrifice, for living beings seeking merit, making merit that ripens in the acquisitions. What he means by ripen in the acquisitions is by you coming in contact with someone in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, or practicing for the realization of the 4 stages of enlightenment. It ripens in you acquiring one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. It's where you are able to learn and grow and develop. So you making offerings to these people will result in you being able to acquire wisdom and get to the point where you acquire and attain one of these 4 stages of enlightenment. Whereas if you weren't making offerings to someone in one of these 4 stages, you wouldn't be able to actually learn the wisdom that you need to be able to get to enlightenment. So that's what he's talking about there. And then when he says, what is given to the community bears great fruit, what he's talking about there is what I was just saying, that anybody who's accepting offerings from a community, they should be using a small portion of that for themselves to be able to help them to sustain their life and accomplish the things that they need to accomplish on a personal level. But then you should see that there's this benefit coming back to the community, that there should be meditation cushions and a place to come and learn and grow and develop, and they should be willing to spend their time to help you and things like this. So that's what he's saying, that there's this benefit that comes back to the community, that it shouldn't just be that the offerings that are being made are just for that person, but that person should be kind of the steward who's overlooking those offerings and now figuring out, how can I benefit the community with these offerings that are coming to that person, right? So this is how an individual should be functioning. So this is a discourse from the Buddha talking about merit, and you're going to see some others here too that I'm going to share. But here, just kind of to recap some of that, is the practice of generosity helps a practitioner to eliminate craving, desire, attachment in the mind, which is ultimately eliminating the discontentedness, because craving, desire, attachment is the cause. And it's also helping to eliminate rebirth as well. These are words from the Buddha. He says that by practicing generosity, it eliminates the stain of selfishness. He talks about this selfishness as being like a stain, like a pollution. And then one of the things that I share with people is that as you gain more and more confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, where you're starting to get rid of your doubt about the teachings, this is oftentimes where someone starts to practice more and more generosity. Because in order to get rid of your doubt about the teachings, you would have needed to investigate the teachings very deeply and examine them. And then you would reflect on them to independently verify them. And then you would be practicing them and seeing that they're actually working to improve the condition of your mind in your life. And as that's starting to occur and you're seeing how true these teachings actually are, you may get to the point where you're like, wow, I would like these teachings to be available for other people. And by you supporting the teachings, that's what's going to allow that to occur. So as somebody's getting rid of more and more of their doubt, they oftentimes are more and more willing to support the teachings because they've seen the benefit to their own mind and their own life. And then something that I like to clear up as a misunderstanding about merit is that if you go to some places and you make offerings, you might make an offering to an ordained practitioner, and after you make an offering, they might ask you to go get this little urn of water, and they might ask you to pour this water out while they're chanting, and they think that what's occurring is that whatever wholesome Kamma you've generated, whatever merit you've generated in that situation by making an offering, that you're now transferring it to your dead relatives or to somebody else. And while this is a wonderful thought to think that you could transfer your merit to somebody else, it's actually not possible. You can't transfer your good deeds to someone else. You guys saw that with the natural law of Kamma, that the Buddha said you are the owner, the heir of your Kamma. Whatever you do, either wholesome or unwholesome, you are its heirs. So it's not like dad can go around and, be angry and bitter and hostile and harsh and use drugs and alcohol his whole life. And then he dies and he's maybe in hell or the animal realm or something. And now we do a bunch of things to help dad by making offerings, and then we transfer our merit to dad. This isn't actually possible. Dad has to do wise things to eliminate his craving, desire, attachment. So if you understand what merit is doing for you, which is eliminating your craving, desire, attachment within your own mind, then you understand that it's not possible to transfer this to somebody else. You can't transfer that benefit to somebody else. But there's people here in Thailand, quite a few, and all throughout the world, that think that if you pour out this water into a little bowl, that you're somehow transferring this merit to somebody else. But you can see that's a rite, that's a ritual, that's a ceremony, and the Buddha didn't teach any of those things. So that's something that was integrated into the teachings by other people. So if somebody asks you to do that, you don't have to do that. I've been to places where they've gestured to go get it, and I just smile and I say, that's okay. And they just sit there and they chant. And they think that they're blessing you by chanting. And once again, they can't do that either. It's not possible for a human being to bless another human being. If you understand what the meaning of the word blessing is, this is to ask for God's favor and protection. And there's nothing this human being can do or say that's going to bless you. And in order for somebody to think that way, that they are blessing you, this is a lot of ego in that person's own mind to think that I've got the power to bless you, to bring in this special power from God to protect you and look over you. And this is sometimes what you see in the world. And I'm not saying anything negative about those people who choose to do that. That's just a lack of wisdom within one's own mind. But if you understand the truth, then you understand when you are in those kinds of environments, that stuff isn't what's helping you get to enlightenment. Pouring out this water, somebody blessing you, you need to cultivate wisdom and train your own mind. That's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. So this is one of the misunderstandings in the world about merit, is that people think that you can transfer it from one person to the other. This isn't possible. You can transfer money, but you can't transfer merit, right? The benefit of merit is eliminating your craving, desire, attachment. So it's not like we have an app to transfer merit, because right now it's pouring out water, but who knows, another 300 years from now, maybe someone invents an app that they think they can transfer their merit from one person to the other, and it just isn't possible. Okay, so I share that with you guys. The Buddha has this teaching here where he teaches you about, if you're going to make an offering, how to do that in terms of your own qualities of mind, and then who you're actually making an offering to. So he's talking to a female here because a female asked him a question, and he says, essentially, this is how you purify your offering, that before you make an offering, your mind should be joyful. While you're making the offering, your mind should be calm and confident in the act of actually giving. And then after you give, your mind should still be joyful. Essentially, what he's doing here is he's teaching you how to protect your mind and think through your decisions before you make them. So that before you make an offering, you should think through, like, hey, is this the amount of offering that I can make, either my time, my effort, my energy, or my resources. Because if you go too far, you're not going to have what you need. But if you're selfish, you're going to have probably remorse at the end. You're going to be like, oh, I didn't give enough. I'm so selfish. Why didn't I help out more? Or maybe you gave too much and you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to take care of myself now? I gave too much. So what the Buddha is teaching you is how to think through your offering and be joyful and be confident in the decision that you've made about, here, this is what I'm able to do. I'm able to sweep the floor, or I'm able to clean a toilet, or I'm able to help one thing or another. You have to make those decisions for yourself, but you should be joyful before you actually give. And then while you're giving, you can be calm and confident in that act of giving, where your mind is stable and steady. And then afterwards, you can still be joyful. You don't have any remorse, like I gave too much or I didn't give enough. You can just be joyful after you've given. So this is for the donor. Then he says for the recipient of who you make an offering to, that it would be wise to find someone who's free of craving, anger, and ignorance, or that they're practicing for the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance. If you're making an offering to someone who's free of craving, anger, and ignorance, that means they're enlightened. A person who's free of craving, you're not going to see them in a hurry to hurry up and do things and chasing after things. You're not going to see them being angry and bitter and harsh. You're not going to see them even be slightly annoyed if they're free of anger. If they're free of ignorance, you're going to see they have deep wisdom about the teachings to enlightenment and what it takes to get to enlightenment. They're going to be able to describe those to you very easily. And then someone who's practicing for the removal of these things, you would see them in the process of doing that. You would see them working towards the elimination of craving, anger, and ignorance. So he talks about finding someone who's either enlightened or close to it, because that way you're supporting the teachings to come into the world, because that individual is practicing the teachings closely themselves, and then they'll be sharing them with others. So this is the way the Buddha teaches you to practice if you're interested in making any offerings at any time. A student asked him one time during his life about, okay, kind of all this Eightfold Path, these 5 precepts, the meditation training, all this other stuff. They were like, can you just boil it down? Like, what should we be doing on a daily basis to be able to get to enlightenment? And the Buddha gave 3 things. It's called the way of practice. So while you need to know the Eightfold Path and all those other teachings that I've been sharing with you, this is like something you can be doing on a daily basis. This is frequently that you should be doing these things. He talks about generosity, moral conduct, and meditation. This is what you would like to be doing frequently on a day-to-day basis, looking for ways to practice generosity, not just merit, but generosity. So if I'm walking into a store and I see somebody's behind me, I'm going to open the door and hold it for them, right? Because this is a practice of generosity. You're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required without any expectation of anything in return. But you need to be careful that you're not standing there with the expectation that they're going to say thank you. Because if you're standing there with the expectation that they're going to say thank you, because of impermanence, not everyone's going to say thank you, right? So as you're holding the door, just do it because you know you're enhancing the quality of your mind. So you would like to frequently be finding ways to practice generosity in your day-to-day life. Someone drops a wallet on the ground. It's like, hey, ma'am, you dropped this, or sir, you dropped this. You didn't have to pick that up. That's your generosity, right? So you can find ways to practice generosity. And this isn't always financial, right? It's time, effort, energy, and resources. So you can share with other people in different ways and practice generosity. Then he teaches to practice moral conduct. Moral conduct is the way you interact through your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. You would like to clean that up. Because if your pipe is spewing all this oil all over the world, you'd like to shut that down, right? You're not going to go clean up your old unwholesome Kamma first. You need to actually shut down the pipe and stop spewing all this unwise behavior out into the world. So cleaning up your moral conduct and paying attention to that on a day-to-day basis, that's something that you would like to be doing frequently each day, working on your moral conduct. And then also each day, he teaches that you should meditate. Right? So that's why I shared with you that 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, you're gradually building up to that. By the way, this morning, we meditated for 30 minutes. So if you guys felt like that was too long or too short, you'll kind of know where you're at in that practice, right? So these are the 3 things that you would like to be doing, is training the mind through generosity, moral conduct, and meditation. This is a daily thing that you're working on. And you wouldn't ever be able to learn the moral conduct and the meditation if it wasn't for the generosity of the people who shared. They'll be able to help you have a place like this to come and learn and grow and develop. So you would like to be doing these things frequently throughout your day-to-day experiences. Here's some more words from the Buddha about generosity. This teaching I always share whenever I talk about generosity because I think it's very impactful, very helpful for a student to learn. It's titled, If Beings Knew the Results of Giving and Sharing. He says, monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. So what he's talking about here, about the results of giving and sharing, is enlightenment itself. Basically what he's saying is, if beings knew how peaceful and how joyful the enlightened mind is, and that it's generosity that leads to that, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. So that's what he's sharing here. But because beings do not know, as he knows, the peace and the joy of the enlightened mind, they eat without having shared it. So food is one of the things that people oftentimes have a hard time sharing. It goes back to those animalistic instincts that we were talking about earlier. As animals, we tend to hoard our food and we don't want to share it with other people. So this is an opportunity where you can readily share on a day-to-day basis, because you just heard that it's important to practice generosity in your day-to-day life. So if you go out to have food with people, obviously you can share your food right there, right? Like you have some chips, you have some dessert, you have something in front of you, you can offer it to somebody else. They may or may not choose to accept it, depending on if they're practicing the teachings, but you can offer it to people and you can share your food. You can even take your friends to lunch and maybe pay for their lunch from time to time. Not because you want anything or expect anything from them, but because you're practicing generosity. So sharing food tends to be very challenging for people. So if you go to 7-Eleven, you get a bag of chips and you pop it open, instead of just eating your chips, you got some friends there, send it around. Hey, you guys would like a chip? And if the bag comes all the way back to you and there's only one chip left, eat your one chip and go get another bag, right? How much was it? 20 baht, 30 baht? It wasn't very expensive. Go get another bag of chips, right? But this is you sharing and not hoarding things and being selfish. So the Buddha is talking here something that I think is very helpful to be able to see his analogy that he's describing, that if there was a last bite, if you knew that this is going to help you to get to this peace and joy, you would still share this last bite of food if there was someone to share it with. So here in Asia, this is one of the reasons why they put all the food in the middle, right? If you have a family of 5 or 6 or 8 people, in some places here in Thailand, they don't have enough food for everybody to get full at the end of their meal. But if they put all the food in the middle and everybody takes 2 or 3 spoonfuls, and now together as a family, we're all gradually eating, at the end of this meal, everyone's not full, but everybody had a little bit of food, and we all have a little bit of food in our stomach. So that's why the food goes in the middle here in Asia, so everybody just kind of shares the food. Where what we tend to do in the Western world is kind of hoard our food, and we kind of load up our plate, and then we just kind of keep it to ourselves, where we can change that. We don't have to do it that way. We can choose to share our food. And this is really good for a home with children, is just put the food in the middle, and it teaches everybody to share their food. So this is a great little teaching from the Buddha. Okay, here's another one where he talks about the benefits of giving. I'll read this one to you. He says, monks, there are these 5 benefits of giving. What 5? 1 is dear and agreeable to many people. Wholesome persons go in large numbers to one or to you. 1 acquires a wholesome reputation. 1 is not deficient in householders' duties. With the breakup of the body after death, 1 is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. These are the 5 benefits of giving. By giving, 1 becomes dear. 1 follows the duty of the wholesome. The wholesome, mentally disciplined monks always go in large numbers to 1. They teach 1 the teachings that dispels all discontentedness, having understood which, the taintless one here attains nibbana, or enlightenment. So these are 5 benefits that the Buddha is talking about with giving. So while we understand what the benefits are, you wouldn't be interested in practicing generosity just so you can get these benefits, because that would be an expectation. So the Buddha, when he's teaching the natural law of Kamma, he's teaching you generosity to not have expectation of something in return. But at the same time, he's teaching you what you will experience as a result of practicing generosity, so that when you're experiencing it, you'll see that it's the natural law of Kamma very clearly. You'll be able to see that. Whereas if you didn't understand this and you started experiencing these results, you wouldn't know what it's coming from. You need to be able to see this cause and effect with your generosity without expecting it or longing or yearning for it. What I'm going to do is hone in on number 5, because all the others are pretty straightforward. But if you guys have questions, you're welcome to ask me. But I'm going to hone in on number 5, because this one here, you see, talks about essentially at death, that if you practice generosity, you can be reborn into a heavenly world, right? That's not the goal of the teachings of the Buddha, is to be reborn in the heavenly world. Those beings are still in the cycle of rebirth. They need to get out of the cycle of rebirth, and it's not a permanent existence in the heavenly realm. So they're going to be reborn if they don't get to enlightenment. They have the ability to get to enlightenment in the heavenly realm, but because this realm is so pleasurable, they oftentimes become complacent and they don't learn and practice. So they're oftentimes reborn into other realms. So the goal isn't to get to the end of this life and be reborn in heaven, because even there, you still need to get to enlightenment and escape this whole cycle of rebirth. But if you're practicing the teachings here in the human world, and for some reason you fall short of enlightenment, there's the potential to be reborn into the heavenly world. And that's what he's talking about here. It's just helping you understand the natural law of Kamma. He's not saying that this should be your goal or this is what your ultimate, objective should be. He's just sharing with you, hey, if you practice generosity and you're reborn, there's the potential that you're reborn into this heavenly world. But you're right now in the ideal existence to be able to make your way to enlightenment. It's not the heavenly world that you would like to ultimately get to. You would like to get to enlightenment now in this life and enjoy the peace and the joy for the rest of this life and just be done with this constant cycle of rebirth. So I like to hone in on that, because whenever you see the Buddha talking about generosity, he will tend to mention this about being reborn in the heavenly world, but just understand that that's not the ultimate goal, that you would like to get to enlightenment in this life. And then he has these other teachings here too, that if you guys have questions on that, when we get to questions, feel free to ask me about these. I will help you with that. So here's some more from the Buddha. He says, gifts of teachings is superior than gifts of material things. Monks, there are these two kinds of gifts, a gift of material things and a gift of the teachings. Of these two kinds of gifts, this is supreme, a gift of the teachings. There are these two kinds of sharing of material things and sharing of the teachings. Of these two kinds of sharing, this is supreme, sharing of the teachings. Of these two kinds of assistance with material things and assistance with the teachings. Of these two kinds of assistance, this is supreme, assistance with the teachings. So what he's saying is, like, the best thing you could ever do is share the teachings with other people. And there's no teaching where you should actively go out and start, banging on drums and holding picket signs and telling people to come learn the teachings or they're going to hell, right? That's not what the Buddha is teaching you here. He's just saying, hey, if you choose to share the teachings, this is like the best thing you could ever do, because if you could give somebody the gift of eliminating their anger and their sadness and their guilt and their shame and their fear and their stress and anxiety, this would be the best gift that you could ever give to anybody. Right now, you probably can't give that gift to anybody in terms of the teachings themselves. But this is one of the reasons why I've decided to spend the rest of this life to share these teachings, because it's the very best thing I could do is to help other people get to this enlightened mental state. So one of the ways that we can share the teachings with others, if you don't have the ability to actively teach them, is to support them so that other people can get access to them. That if you see a place that is sharing the teachings, that now you can actually support that place so that other people can get access to the teachings. Because if you had two buttons to press, where you could press this button and your mother and your father and your brothers and sisters and other people would stay angry and bitter and harsh and hostile the rest of their life, or you could press this button and they would be peaceful and joyful for the rest of their life, which button would you press, A or B? A? Would you press A? Probably press B, right? You'd like your life partner, your children, to be peaceful and joyful for the rest of their life. But the way that we accomplish that is by helping the teachings to be able to be accessible to other people in the world. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you here. And now the last thing on this, and I'll open up to whatever questions you guys have, is the Buddha here is teaching mutual support between monks, Brahmins, and householders. Let me teach you guys what Brahmins are before I read this to you. What a Brahmin is a Hindu priest. That during the lifetime of the Buddha, these priests were born into a certain family. It was 15% of society. It was a very strong caste system. Us common people were taught that if you would like to improve your life, you have to go to a Brahmin, you have to pay them money, and they're going to do some rites and rituals and ceremonies and prayer on your behalf, and then your life was going to get better. We were taught that we weren't able to improve our life. We weren't able to communicate with God. It was only these special people that could do that for us. So this bred a lot of corruption. And the Buddha saw that this wasn't true, that if you would like to improve your life, you needed to cultivate wisdom and train your mind. So that's what he was teaching. But these Brahmin were still in practice, and they're still in practice today. And it bred a lot of corruption. And sometimes these Brahmin would come and learn with the Buddha because they were teaching some moral conduct, but they were doing rites and rituals and ceremonies of worship. So here he's going to talk about this mutual support. He's saying monks, Brahmins, and householders are very helpful to you. They provide you with the requisites of robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines in time of sickness. And you monks are very helpful to Brahmin and householders as you teach them the teachings that are good in the middle, or good in the beginning, the middle, and the end, with the correct meaning and wording. And you proclaim the spiritual life in its fulfillment in complete purity. Thus, monks, this spiritual life is lived with mutual support for the purpose of crossing the flood and making a complete end of discontentedness. So he's talking about this mutual support between essentially the teachers and the students, that here are the students needing help in their life because they're struggling and having certain difficulties, and they're supporting the ability for these individuals to now get closer and closer to enlightenment, cultivating their mind, cultivating wisdom. And now these individuals are going to share back with these people how to actually get to enlightenment. So that's the way this mutual support has been designed ever since the beginning of the time that the Buddha was teaching. That him dying and no longer teaching, he couldn't be assured whether somebody was actually going to share his teachings or not. So what he did is basically encourage teachers to give up your worldly life, enter into a life where you're just basically supporting your students, and then your students can get the benefit of those teachings that you've been cultivating. And then if your students would like to support you, then they'll support you, right? But there's never an expectation from a teacher. There shouldn't be an expectation from a teacher for their students to support them. The teacher should just be sharing their teachings of the Buddha without any expectation of anything in return. So here, the Buddha is talking about this mutual support between the teachers and the community of the students. So I'd like to let you guys know here at the end, because this is the last thing I'm going to teach you on this particular topic, unless you guys have questions, is that any support that you guys have given me during this course, whether it's sweeping the floor, whether it's taking out the trash, whether it's bringing in snacks or filling up the water, or anything you guys do, maybe you've even put some donations into the donation box. I'd like to just thank you for your support. Thank you for everything that you do to be able to help me to help you, because that's what I do, is I share the teachings with others, because I know that this is the very best gift that I could ever give to anybody. So if you're providing any kind of support here, I'm very appreciative of that. But at the same point, understand that I don't have any expectation that you share anything with me whatsoever. My interest to help you along the path to enlightenment is without expectation. I'm interested in helping you and seeing you improve to the point where you can get to enlightenment, and that comes with no expectations whatsoever. Whether you ever help me or not, it doesn't matter. I'm here to help you and share the teachings of the Buddha with you. But if you do decide to help in any way, just know that I'm very appreciative of that, because without your support, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. Everything you see around you has been support from somebody at some point. The meditation cushions you're sitting on, the carpets that we sit on, the projector, the projector screen, all of this stuff has been provided by students. Because at one time I used to teach here, and this room didn't actually look like this at one time. At one time I didn't have this nice projector. I just had a beat up old projector that people could barely see. And there were students who were getting benefit, and they were like, hey, we'd like to buy you a new projector. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I helped them to find the one to purchase, and they purchased it. And now that's why you got this nice clear projector, right? So everybody has contributed, or not everybody, but different people have contributed at different times to be able to help us create the environment that we have here now. And any support that you offer, I just would like you to know that I'm very appreciative of that. But there's never any expectation that somebody would do that, because I'm here to help you regardless. So feel free to come here and learn as much as you'd like to learn, whether it's here or online or personal guidance or any of the things that I share, like videos and books and podcasts, and all this stuff is available for you at no cost. Okay. So do you guys have any questions on merit or what it is or how to practice it? Looks like we have a couple questions. Yep.
I have a questions regarding the part.
About the what?
Blessing.
Oh, the blessing. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. There are moments friends and family got sick. I wish they got better. Mm-hmm. And people are struggling. I have intention, hopefully they out of their life struggle. Mm-hmm. And also reading the loving kindness that also says, may we be safe, may we be well. Mm-hmm. Is this kind of blessing, or how it seems have different definitions? You're referring to ego or these kind of things.
Yeah. So none of that is a blessing. When you're doing a meditation where you're saying, may my mom be peaceful, safe, well, or free from discontentedness, you're not asking for any intervention from any being to change mom. What you're doing is changing your own mind. Because what that meditation is for is to help you eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will and all the lesser versions. You're essentially rewiring your mind so that now when you're around mom, you're being more loving and kind. And now your relationship improves. So there's never a time where anybody, a human being, can bless another human being. This goes on in the world quite a bit in different environments, but that would require an enormous amount of ego from me to think that I can somehow bless you. There's nothing different about me and you in terms of our abilities. Now, maybe I've trained my mind differently than you're, okay, but that doesn't give me any kind of special ability to bless you. Because what a blessing is to provide protection or favor from God to you. That's what it says in the dictionary of what a blessing is. And there's no ability for me to do that to you or you to do that to me. If you have an understanding of this being God, and if this God would like to do anything in your life, that being's going to choose to do that on their own. It doesn't have anything to do with me whatsoever. So there is no blessings in the teachings of the Buddha, but you will hear people say things like, may the Buddha bless you, or may the triple gem bless you, or things like this. People say these kinds of things all the time, but it's not true reality of what's actually occurring. Everything on this path is to train your own mind. It's not to bless other people. But you will see this from time to time in different environments.
Okay, understood. Another question is the wording says, like, may we be well, may all beings be safe. I'm just, the word may is a little bit awkward. Is there something like, I hope this might happen or might not happen? Is this intent?
Yeah, so what you're doing is, like, say the mind's angry and hateful, right? Say, like, I hate my mom, right? And that's the thoughts and the ideas that are going through my mind is, I hate my mom. I'm really angry and resentful towards her. Well, if I sit in meditation and I think, may mom be peaceful. May mom be safe. Right? So now I'm rewiring my mind to not have those hateful and resentful thoughts anymore. I'm rewiring it to now be loving and kind. So now when I go around mom, instead of thinking these hateful thoughts, I'm now being loving and kind to her. So it changes my intentions, my speech, my actions become very different around mom. And that's where our relationship is really changing. Because I've changed my mind to think more loving and kind thoughts, Now my intentions, my speech, and my actions around mom are changing, and that's where our relationship improves.
Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. We'll get some of the people that don't typically ask questions.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand whether I'm understanding it correctly. So was it that we mentioned accumulating merit is a form of creating wholesome karma? And then my question is, because we also mentioned whether, like if there is karma, that is what brings us to the, to come back again. So if we are working towards the path of enlightenment, shouldn't we not try to create any karma, whether wholesome or unwholesome?
It's our unwholesome karma that has us come back into the world, because it's craving, anger, and ignorance, those pollutions of mind. If those exist in the mind, then there's going to be rebirth. But if we extinguish those out of the mind, there's no craving, then there's no spark, there's no fuel that leads to the next rebirth. So by producing wholesome karma, now that wholesome karma, you're going to be practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And now there's not going to be a rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. So by producing wholesome karma, you're extinguishing the causes and conditions that are leading to a rebirth.
Right. So maybe I'm just also trying to understand this better, because maybe in my world it's like Newton's third law, like cause and effect. So when you give people money, so an action has already been put out to the world, even though it's a positive action, but it still would have a corresponding reaction or response to that. So that seems to still be an outstanding action, thing, if you know what I mean, even though it's positive.
Yeah, the effect that you're experiencing is by you, using your example, donating money, I think you said.
Yes.
Now you're practicing generosity. You're eliminating your craving. So you're producing wholesome karma or wholesome results by accumulating merit. But that merit is going to accumulate into the elimination of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind, among other things too. But it's going to produce the elimination of those pollutions. So now your mind's moving more and more to peace and more to joy. And now that's what you're experiencing. And eventually you're no longer making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. So now you're not going to experience the discontentedness, but you're also not going to experience rebirth either.
Right. Yeah, I think that kind of adjusts my maybe false understanding of it, because it's like in my world it's like, as long as you put something out there, then it has to neutralize. I think the word is neutralize, whether positive or negative. And if it's not neutralized, then it will still create that recurring entry. Yeah.
So by you practicing generosity, it reduces your pollution in your mind. And now you're putting that generosity out onto the world. And now that person is doing whatever they're doing, having fond thoughts of you because you practice generosity. But there's no unwholesome result that's going to come back to you because of that, because you've now are extinguishing all your unwholesome karma. So there's nothing else for you to experience in terms of unwholesomeness after that. You're only going to experience wholesome karma.
Right. But you did mention just now something along the lines of, that's why some people get to go to the higher, place or something, because they have accumulated a lot of merit or something. Yeah. So even I understand that it's not that we are going, to do that just to achieve something, but I'm just wondering, is it because exactly you have accumulated some, positive so-called results, and that has to be offset by some action of you being upgraded to somewhere as a form of exchange?
Yeah, so in that situation where you've reduced your craving, anger, and ignorance by producing a certain amount of generosity, because you have less pollution in your mind, you're going to be reborn in progressively improved situations. If you still have pollutions, that means you're going to be reborn, but you're going to be reborn in a better and better situation. So even if you come back to the human realm, you're going to be reborn back into a better situation. Whereas if maybe this time you were born in one type of family, next time you're going to be reborn in a different type of family. And now in that new family, maybe there's better resources, there's more wisdom, and it makes it easier for you to now cultivate your mind and experience improved results in this new life. But ultimately, you need to extinguish all the craving, anger, and ignorance so that you are no longer making decisions through that. So you've extinguished all your unwholesome kamma, and now you're only experiencing wholesome kamma. And one of that wholesome results, or the wholesome kamma, if you get to enlightenment, is there's no more rebirth. There's no need to come back here ever again, because you've learned everything about this world in terms of the wisdom of the natural laws. You've learned everything here. Your mind's let go. You no longer need to come back and keep learning over and over and over again.
Right. So just to consolidate it, so it, as long as it's wholesome karma, it doesn't matter that there is karma, that for as long as it's whatever is outstanding is just wholesome karma, then you will not come back again.
Yeah, if you extinguish all your unwholesome karma and you're only experiencing wholesome karma, you're not going to come back to the cycle of rebirth.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You would have already escaped the cycle of rebirth before death. And that's the whole reason why you're even experiencing that peace and joy, because even while you're alive, you're outside of the cycle of rebirth. Yeah. When you're in the cycle of rebirth, you're experiencing the same struggles and difficulties over and over and over again until you cultivate the wisdom. Then once you cultivate the wisdom, boom, you're not experiencing that issue anymore. And you've probably seen that in your life, right? So you need to be able to do that on each individual situation, cultivate the wisdom, and now you can get further and further outside that cycle of rebirth. And now you're more and more in the peace and the joy.
Okay. So even though there's still a lot of positive karma, it doesn't mean that it's going to create anything else.
Yeah,
it's just as it is.
I think what you're thinking about is because I'm creating any type of karma, that means I have to experience it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
Correct. I think it's too deeply ingrained in me that there's always something that has to come back to neutralize, and you have to be totally free, like in an exchange way, like neutralize in entirety, then you can fully enlighten.
All that wholesome karma that you're generating, you're experiencing it through having gotten to enlightenment and only experiencing wholesome karma for the rest of your life. You're just experiencing nothing but wholesomeness. So I'm not saying I'm enlightened, but I'm not saying I'm not enlightened. But now when I go home, it's nothing but smiles from my son, hugs and kisses. My wife smiles, hello, how are you? Where in the past I would go home, it was arguing and fighting and problem after problem. Now it's just nothing but fun and enjoyment everywhere I go.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Have some different people. Yep.
I also had a question, just like you did, about the loving kindness meditation.
It's on. It's still on.
Okay. Is it okay to slightly change the words? Because I also had the same problem he had with the word may. It felt like I was trying to invoke something rather than, just putting out the right attitude in my own mind and the right feeling toward the outside world. I changed it to, I wish them peace, or I wish them safety. Is that okay?
There's the ability to change those phrases, but you need to be careful with how you're changing them. Using the word wish oftentimes comes from a place of craving or desire. So you have to be careful with that. Also, you need to be careful with that last word, like may they be peaceful, right? That's a non-burdening word. Whereas if it's like, may mom be kind, that's like I'm not going to be loving with her until she's kind with me, right? So it's what's called a non-burdening word, that you're not having to judge mom of whether she is kind or not before you will practice loving kindness. So there is ability to change them, but you might decide to run them past me before you fully implement it to make sure that there's no craving and there's no burden, there's no expectation from you to mom. Because when I say like, may mom be peaceful, even though my mom's already dead, if I did that, right? May mom be peaceful. There's no expectation there. There's nothing. May mom be safe. There's no expectation there. May mom be well. No expectation. May mom be free of discontentedness and all the suffering it causes. No expectation whatsoever. So that's what you would like to be sure that you don't have any of that in your meditation. That way you're practicing with non-craving, and that way it's going to produce the wholesome results for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the human realm, the animal realm, hell, and heaven. And due to my understanding, I understand animal realm and human realm, that there's always a death which causes the rebirth. With the hell and heaven, my understanding from previous teachings elsewhere is that those are more forever. So how do those play into rebirth?
Yeah, that's not true. Hell and heaven aren't permanent realms, because you can see the universal truth of impermanence. You can independently verify that. If you learned this in a Christian environment, is that where you learned it? In a Christian environment? Yeah. So it's interesting because Christians will typically teach that heaven is permanent, but ask them about Satan. What happened to Satan? Satan was apparently in heaven, and then he was cast out of heaven and sent to hell, right? So in this situation, heaven's not permanent, because if heaven was permanent, Satan wouldn't have been banished to hell. So we can see that there's a conflict. This is one of the problems when we're not teaching based on the natural laws. You can see all kinds of conflict in teachings. So these realms are not permanent. These realms are there for you to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma. So if someone, let's just say in the human realm, is murderous, is aggressive and hostile and bitter, is stealing things, these kinds of things, their mind, even though they're in the human realm, they're functioning very much like a hell being or an animal. So in order to extinguish that Kamma, so one of the ways to extinguish a craving, desire, attachment is to fulfill it. So if somebody has stealing and they're murderous, and let's just say they have a lot of sexual misconduct, they're most likely going to be reborn down into the animal realm. And now in that realm, they're going to be doing a lot of killing and stealing and sexual misconduct. And now when they do a whole lot of that and experience the unwholesome results from it, then they can learn from that and then ultimately make their way back to the human realm with an opportunity to get to enlightenment. So the hell realm, afflicted spirits, you didn't mention that one. That's like ghosts. Afflicted spirits. And then the heavenly realm, these are just formless realms, because not all beings are form. If every single being had physical form, then that would be permanence. So there's these other realms where beings are formless. And those realms are there for people to extinguish, or beings to extinguish their unwholesome Kamma. And now they'll be able to make their way back to the human realm or heavenly realm and be able to have an opportunity to get to enlightenment. And they're not permanent. None of the realms are permanent. And we can see that and independently verify it through the cycle of rebirth.
Is Kamma, so do animals have also Kamma?
Yes, every being has Kamma. So just being reborn into the animal realm, there's Kamma there, but also as an animal, you're going to produce Kamma too, because these natural laws are affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. So for example, like a lion, if I was a lion and I was aggressive and hostile and bitter and I'm killing each day in order to eat, I'm going to have a shorter lifespan, right? A lion, average lion lives for about 8 to 12 years. Whereas if I'm a turtle or, an elephant or something like this, where I'm not typically killing in order to eat, I'm going to have a much longer lifespan, right? And this is the results of decisions. So this isn't true in every single situation, but typically beings who are not killing and doing these really harmful things, they're going to have longer lifespans. So the ability to go from like a turtle or an elephant into the human realm is much more likely than going from like a lion or a snake into a human realm. But it's possible. But it's more likely if you're an elephant, for example, to go into a human existence. So all these beings have Kamma, and they're making decisions on a day-to-day basis. So if I am a lion and I attack a antelope, there could be another lion who comes and attacks me, or there could be another being who comes and attacks me as a result of attacking this being, and that's my Kamma.
So it just like as an animal, there is a lot less control over action, over working on their Kamma. So the animal has a lot less control over their Kamma to work on it.
They have less wisdom, and they have less ability to cultivate that wisdom in the animal realm versus here in the human realm. But they're still making decisions, but they're making decisions through their lack of wisdom. They're functioning on craving, anger, and ignorance. And this is why animal life is so horrible and so challenging. But what we're seeing is this shrinking of the animal realm, and we're seeing this explosion of the human realm. That's what we would expect to see. That's what we could predict to see. If the cycle of rebirth is true, we would see as the animal realm shrinks, those beings can't get to enlightenment, so they have to be reborn somewhere. So we should be able to see the other realms starting to expand. And that's exactly what we see. Scientists tell us that 99% of the animals that once existed in the earth are now extinct. What we see as animals is only 1%. So if the animal realm is shrinking and we know that they can't get to enlightenment, we should be able to see that other realms are starting to expand. And that's what we see is the human realm has expanded. And this is supporting the natural laws and the cycle of rebirth. We can see that's part of the truth, because if the animals were shrinking and the human beings were shrinking, then it doesn't make sense. But in this scenario, it makes sense.
So from human realm, one can only fall into the animal realm. You can go lower, or is it possible, or is there a lower realm than animal realm?
Yeah, it goes hell, animal, afflicted spirits, humans, and then heavenly beings. And from each realm, you can be reborn in any of those realms. So even from hell, it's very rare, but you can go up into human, or you can go up into the heavenly realm even. From human realm, you can go down into hell, animal, afflicted spirits, or into the heavenly realm, or back into human realm. There's no chain of events. Beings can be reborn in and out of all these different realms at any time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is merit. I've got a little bit here to share with you guys on continued support on the path to enlightenment before we get to our lunch break. So let me just share this with you. It'll take me all of about 3 to 5 minutes. So I'd like to help you guys understand now that we're coming to a close. We have tomorrow our tour, but you guys are going to need continued support beyond this particular course if you're interested in getting to enlightenment. These are all the options for you. There's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, and quizzes that are all available from our website. If you go to this website, you'll be able to see all these things are available for you. There's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats you can attend here. You can attend online. I also travel in different places. I just got back from Mexico a few months ago. I'm getting ready to go to California. All of these classes and courses and retreats, no matter where I teach, they're always available to you at no cost. So whenever I go somewhere, if I'm invited, someone will invite me. They'll say, hey, we would like you to come here. We'd like to have you teach some courses. I always ensure that they're available at no cost, that there's no charging for the courses. So if you guys see me teaching anywhere, you will be able to attend those at no cost. Whether it's here in Thailand or anywhere else in the world that I teach, you can attend online or in person at no cost. We have 2 ongoing programs. One is called the Group Learning Program. This meets each Sunday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. here at the temple, and I live stream that. And then also 9 p.m. I do it from home in our home studio. What I do is this first book that we've been using for this course, I go chapter by chapter each Sunday. We just finished chapter 7 this Sunday, so we're going to be in chapter 8, which is the 3 poisons, which you guys just learned yesterday. That's where we're at in the book. So you guys could easily go from this program into the group learning program, because the first 2 months of this group learning program is essentially this course. So now that you guys have actually taken this course, if you go into this program now, you're going to learn the 3 poisons. You're going to learn the natural law of Kamma and merit. Those are the next 3 chapters. But after that, everything is like brand new. You guys haven't studied that yet, pretty much. So you guys could easily go into this particular program. And it's a 7-month program that basically repeats every 7 months. We start it over and over and over. And I've taught it like 8 or 9 times by now. Then we have the Pali Canon and English study group. This takes volumes 2 through 13 of the book series. And it's a 1.5-year program where each Saturday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. I'm meeting and teaching students from those other books. So we're just getting ready to start volume 6 of that particular program. And you don't need to start either of these programs at the very beginning. You can join them at any time. And they're all taught live, but where you can't attend live, you can watch the recording because they're all recorded. So this is like consistent ongoing training that if you'd like to learn little by little by little, this is a great way to do that. Then you can also get personal help and personal discussions, either in person or online, because it's one thing learning in a class like this, but it's another thing when you're having a real personal issue and you'd like to get help and figure out how to apply these teachings. So you can always reach out and we can sit down and talk if we're in the same city together, or you can schedule online. There's a scheduling system where you can schedule and we'll meet in Zoom one-on-one and I'll be able to help you. And you can do that an unlimited number of times. And you're going to need that personal guidance to really apply these teachings in your life. So that's available to you as well. Then there's a Facebook group that you might decide to join, whether you do Facebook or not. It's up to you. If you come into Facebook, if you have a Facebook account, you can join this group and you can ask questions in there. And I'm the only person who answers those questions. If you don't do Facebook, some students actually open an account. They put like a little picture of a rainbow or a flower. They don't even share anything on their personal account. They just come into this particular group because they can ask questions to me and then I'll share the answers. But also they can see the questions that other people ask and they can learn from that too. That's one of the ways to learn. So you can get help by asking questions in a class. You can post in this Facebook group. You can send a personal message, or you can schedule personal guidance. Those are the 4 ways that you can get help: asking in class, posting in the Facebook group, sending a private message, or scheduling personal guidance. And then you'll be able to get help. And as I mentioned, all this is offered openly and freely. It'll never be any cost involved in any of this stuff. I've removed all that barrier for you. All you need is to apply your own dedication, your own effort, your own determination, and there's someone here that's willing to help you on this journey to enlightenment. And it's you that's responsible for your learning and growth, and I'm like the tour guide pointing out for you what it is that you need to actually learn. So these are the 2 ongoing programs that I share: the group learning program and the Pali Canon and English study group. And you guys are welcome to attend these at any time. They're taught here and they're taught online. And depending on where you live in the world, you might actually have 2 options. So like that 9 o'clock on Sunday morning in North, Central, and South America, that's like Saturday evening for them, right? And then they have Sunday morning. The evening time here on Sunday night is Sunday morning for them. So depending on where you are in the world, you might actually have 2 options. And where you can't attend these, you have the recordings either on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook group, or on our podcast. You can listen to the recordings. So any questions on continued support? Yes, sir. We should have known. You should just leave your mic on. Okay. Or hook it up to your shirt. Here, put it on a necklace.
The one that's coming, the retreat that's coming day after next, does it make sense to go from here, from this stage of to that one, or is there like gap of missing knowledge?
The January retreat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that January retreat, that's starting in about 2 weeks or 10 days. The first 2.5 days is this course that you just took, but it's in a more consolidated time frame. And I'm pointing out to students more about the first stage of enlightenment, because that retreat's all about getting to the first stage of enlightenment. So we're still teaching the foundational teachings, but I'm pointing out more directly what you need exactly to get to the first stage of enlightenment. But then the last 2.5, 3 days is all new stuff that you haven't learned yet that's going to help you get to that first stage of enlightenment. Whether you choose to take that or not is depending on you and how you learn. Like at the end of this course, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and wow, this is like a lot to digest, then you might need to step away for a while and digest what you've learned here. But if you're like, no, this all makes sense, I'm there right where I need to be, then you could easily go into that next retreat, because you're going to get a refresher on all the things you learned here. And then you're going to get about 2.5, 3 days of new content that you haven't learned before.
Okay, cool.
So it's up to you. All right. So now that you guys know that these teachings a little bit and things like this, we're going to take a lunch break. But when we come back, I'm going to teach you how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. And we're going to talk about the field trip. We're going to talk about an activity. But as you guys go to lunch, I would like to share with you guys that, as you heard, I'm very appreciative of all the generosity that you've practiced to be able to come here and learn. And just, I admire people who are interested in doing this kind of work to improve their life and improve their mind, because it's much easier initially to go to a building and just believe a bunch of things and do rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. That's easier at the beginning, but then you have all the problems later because you don't have the wisdom that you need in your life. It's much more challenging to come to a place like this and really listen and be attentive and ask questions and really think about what it is that's being shared and meditate and change your perspective on how you think about the world and interact with the world. So I really admire people who choose to do this work up front, because as you do this work up front, then it makes life so much easier. This is a much better approach, a much better path. So what I like to do here at the end of a class, as we're coming to an end, is I'd like to share my gratitude with you for choosing to learn and practice these teachings by giving you a little bit of a gift. I've been giving you the very best gift that I could ever give you, as you saw the Buddha share, is the teachings. That's the very best gift I could ever give you. But I actually have an actual gift that I'd like to give you, which is a picture of the Buddha. This big picture that you see in the back of the room, or the one that I use here, this is an artwork of the Buddha that was done by an artist here in Thailand that looked at the original teachings of the Buddha and the Pali Canon of how he described what he looked like, and they did an artwork based on that. All these statues that you see in the world, these don't depict what the Buddha actually looked like, with like a crown on his head and all these kinds of things. This isn't what the Buddha actually looked like during his life. He looked like this. This was an artistic representation based on what's described in the original teachings of the Buddha. And I think it's really helpful for you and other people to know that a Buddha is a human being. He's just like you and me. I like to humanize a Buddha. So oftentimes we see the Buddha in these statues with the crown and sitting up so high. You might think like, oh, it's only a Buddha that can get to enlightenment. But in reality, all of you guys can get to enlightenment too. There's no reason why you can't. And having a picture of the Buddha around can potentially remind you that he's a human being just like you. And just like he got to enlightenment, you can get to enlightenment too. So if you like a picture of the Buddha, I have these smaller versions up here rolled up, and they just happen to look like a diploma. If you would like to think of it like that way at the end of a class, you might think of it that way. But at the very least, if you have this picture maybe hanging somewhere in your house, maybe you're on your phone talking to your mom and you feel this anger starting to come up, and you look over and you see that picture and you're like, right speech, right speech, right speech, right? Or maybe you're going about your day and you've forgotten about meditation, and you look over and you see that picture of the Buddha and it reminds you to meditate. So this can be really helpful to humanize a Buddha, help you understand that yes, you can get to enlightenment too. And it might just be a nice little reminder for you to be able to help you to remember to practice things like right speech and meditation. So if you'd like one of these, I have them up here in this little container, and you're welcome to come get one. I can hand it to you if you'd like. Feel free to pick it up today or tomorrow or any other time. You're more than welcome to have one. And it's just my way of saying thank you for the dedication that you've put in to be able to learn and practice and improve your life, because it's the very best thing you could ever do is learn and practice these teachings, because it's helping you. it's helping those around you, and it's helping all of humanity. Because as you're becoming a more and more peaceful person, it's going to help you to be more and more peaceful and more joyful. It's helping the people around you because you're putting out less and less harm for them to have to deal with. And it's helping all of humanity become a more and more peaceful and kind and gentler place. So thank you for your dedication and your diligence to learning. I've got more to teach you today and tomorrow, but enjoy your lunch. It's, let's see, it's almost 1 o'clock. So what I have to teach you guys this afternoon, let's see, if we got back at, let's see, at 2 o'clock, that'll be like an hour and 10 minutes of lunch. Is that good for you guys? An hour and 10 minutes? Anybody attached to an hour lunch or an hour and a half lunch? Anybody going to be angry if you don't get an hour and a half? Yeah, you're attached to it. So you can see you guys aren't craving an hour and a half, and you're peaceful, right? So there you can verify the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. So, all right, so enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you guys at 2 o'clock, okay? Thank you so much. And if you like a picture, feel free to come up here and get one. You're welcome.